We're joined now in the studio by two Arise analysts. Dr. Constance Ikokwu is with us in the studio, and at our Overflow studio is lawyer and Arise news analyst Frank Tietie. Thank you both of you for joining us on a day like this, taking stock of the last 1 year of the Tinubu administration, based on his 8-point agenda, the Renewed Hope agenda. 8 issues, that Tinubu promised Nigerians to address very quickly, including corruption for that matter, food security, jobs, of course, what else? Access to capital, inclusion, and what have you. Let me start with you, Dr. Constance Ikokwu. Based on your observations and your assessment, would you say that Tinubu has delivered on the 8-point agenda, on the Renewed Hope agenda, satisfactorily?
Well, the first thing to say is that given the profound inequalities that exist in our country today and the challenging economic time that we live in, I think not a few Nigerians were very much interested to see what this government is going to do. And they also expected to have a cabinet that would do extraordinary things and, will perform spectacularly well. And so the president promised last year that there will be an assessment of his ministers. An office was set up, a policy coordination office was set up to make sure that happens. So today we are hearing from the ministers. A couple of them have already presented their scorecard. I think in general, it is a mixed bag in Nigeria today. Whatever the ministers have said, if it is not translating to everyday life, so for instance, how has that impacting, or how is it impacting the price of food, the cost of fuel, how much people have to pay for school fees, how much they have to spend on shelter, provision of jobs, is there still employment, enough employment, and so many basic things. If this does not translate to everyday lives, then I think it will mean very little to people.
Well, let me quickly bring in Frank here. Some will say just 365 days, 1 year, perhaps is not too good for you to start talking about gains and perhaps promises. But again, we're starting to look at this. Help us make sense of what you've seen so far. Let's take it off from Gbenga Asheru's report. We saw the Minister for the FCT and that of Information, as well as the man in charge of Nigeria's oil industry, Heineken Lokbobiri. What to you, Frank, would you say is the crux of their ministries, to the extent that Nigerians will say we've been touched or not touched?
All right. The residents of the Federal Capital Territory may have a sense of a new minister, because the former minister ran the FCT as a moribund territory. It was the administration was comatose. So if Wike is bestriding the FCT with new projects, so it seems to create the sense that something new, something progressive and development is happening. Other than that, the Minister of Information, whose duty it is to sell hope, the Renewed Hope agenda, hasn't sold much of that hope. But Nigerians are quite hopeful because of the ambitious statements that have been made all the time by the various ministers. The Nigerians can decipher, can make a distinction between the suffering that they've had under the first 1 year of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, that has been defined by a lot of hardship, the spiral downturn of the value of the naira, food inflation, insecurity unabated, the loss of value entirely, massive cry for the increase in minimum wage, much of the suffering. But there's a lot of story of hope, when you talk about palliatives that never saw the light of day. But in the long run, if President Tinubu is going to base the assessment of these ministers on the perception of the Nigerian public, he will be very disappointed. Except he appointed them and probably may be impressed by them. Nigerians are certainly not impressed. Yes, on Wike has a way of politicizing much of what he does. So whereas there are so many roads that are yet to be constructed that are in dilapidated condition in the FCT, he has chosen to play to the gallery by scraping off tarred roads in many of those areas where that he will get a lot more view, a lot more public and public applause, and then he has decided to resurface them. But you can't take it away from him that the residents of the FCT never expected some of those flyovers ever in the next 20 years to stand. But Wike has chosen them as symbolic points of development to showcase what has happened. He's done a lot, and you can't take that away from him. But apart from Wike's political statements, like his attempt, that, saying that the president is going to commission bridges, commission roads, and then ultimately residents of the FCT will ride for 2 months free of charge on rails, rail within the city. These are the kind of things that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu needs. The rest ministers, he's going to find it very difficult to get a proper and good assessment of their performance, because Nigerians really don't like them. They are, in fact, they are groaning right now and very, very unhappy with the way the administration has performed so far. The suffering is just a testament that hope is badly needed now. So they probably have to step up their rhetorics. I don't know whether they will have to say things that are untrue, but they really need to rev up the hope in Nigerians right now, who are very, very disillusioned with what has happened so far.
Right, from what both of you have said, Dr. Ikokwu, it means that Tinubu's success will depend largely on the ministers. He has 48 of them. Some would say that maybe he doesn't have the kind of talent that can drive his renewed hope agenda. Do you agree with that? Or are there some bright lights that you've seen among the cabinet members that you feel understand his vision and his drive and are working in that exact direction?
It's not about talent. I mean, before he became president, we heard so much about the Asiwaju of Lagos that was governor and did so well, did wonders, and was going to replicate it at the national level. Now the chips are down, and we can see that it's not that easy for a number of reasons. This is, the federal government is a bigger fish to fry. Right. There's so many states within the country, and it's complex. And secondly, a Asiwaju of more than 20 years ago is not the same person today. He's much older and should be in retirement, frankly, with his children, and maybe working to make sure that there are upcoming leaders that he is mentoring. Having
but
said
some
that,
would say that experience, really does matter, and it comes with age. Some would even say age has nothing to do with it.
Experience matters, but energy is also necessary. At this point, it seems like he just wants to be president for the sake of it. You're not getting that energy and verve, that you want to see from a president, especially in a country, that is facing so many challenges. But, apart from that, I would like to touch on one or two things that, the ministers presented in their scorecard. So, for instance, the Minister of Petroleum, Heineken Lokbogbiri, he talked about increasing the quota from 1.5 million to 1.7 million. So he's actually saying that we've exceeded the OPEC quota. Right. And the question then to ask is, are we allowed to exceed that quota? There are penalties. There are financial, monetary penalties for exceeding the quota. Then that's number one. Then number two is that you can also lose your voting rights if you exceed the quota for important decisions that are made within the body. And number three is that your quota in the future can be reduced. And then he talked about, sustained peace in the Niger Delta. Yes, we'll have it. But let's go to the Minister of Solid Minerals, Dele Alake. He talked about his ability to fight illegal miners by setting up the mining marshals. That's a good thing. He's revoked over 1,619 mining licenses, and he's approved some 4,000 fresh mining licenses.
Right.
But the question again here, very important, Ngozi, is that at this point in Nigeria, shouldn't we be talking about adding more value to our resources? You know, we are still selling raw materials more than 60 years after independence.
But he said during his presentation that those days are gone when you will take out, you know, raw materials from Nigeria, export raw materials. It must be finished products, meaning that the foreign investors that are going to come in, or even the local investors, will have to set up industries here to add value to the economy.
Okay, so let's see, because I think it's a time where we need to ban, you know, the outright sale of raw materials. Yes, you have to compel companies to set up shop here and create the value chain, but don't ask for bribes, please. Make it convenient for them. Make sure that your officials are not asking them for bribe and chasing them away. You want to run a transparent government and a transparent system that adds value and can create more jobs for you on the ground. There are a couple of other things. So the Minister of Steel Development, Shuaibu Audu, also talked about Ajaokuta Steel, the same Ajaokuta Steel that has old Russian technology. They are trying to revive it again. He talked about some $35 million investment for limestone section of that. You know, we're going back there again. The point then is, will this see the light of day, or will we be pouring money again into a project that has become a project for every government cycle?
Let me bring in Frank. And again, before I bring in Frank, quickly, Dr. Ikokwu, we've seen quite a lot of people who are in that age bracket, President Biden, President Buhari, President Tinubu. So perhaps it's just not in their age, but in their ability to do what they should do, and the team. And in this case, we're talking about the team to see how the president is doing. Frank, quickly here, now that Constance has started looking at some of the details, the fine details as highlighted by these ministers, what more would you be looking at in terms of ministries that haven't actually lived up to the billing? There are some ministries that many Nigerians can't, off the cuff, tell you who is in charge of that ministry, let alone whether we have such a ministry. 48 of them. Who should we be asking the president to revisit, perhaps have a second look at the moment?
Well, you don't want me to start creating enemies of these ministers tonight, but I can tell you that more than 50% of those ministers don't qualify. What President Tinubu appears to have done is to give these ministers a chance to probably sell the hope of this his administration in the last 1 year to see if they can impress Nigerians, and in the hope that when Hadiza Bala Usman's report comes in, we can determine those who will go. Certainly, there are certain ministers that just have to go. They've been very bad signal. They've been giving very bad market to the Tinubu's administration. The Minister of Power, for example, he has not shown that he empathizes with the power situation. He appears to be quite disconnected the way NEPA disconnects light from the populace, and Nigerians are actually very disillusioned about him. There are several other ministers that don't reflect any form of the gusto that is required, to drive an administration that is supposed to bring hope. Henneke and Lokobri should not be very proud. The structures that have made, the flow of crude oil to be that much were the ones that the former president put in place, and then which NNPC under Mele Kyari previously worked so hard at, and with Tantita under the leadership of government Tompolo provided. So you shouldn't really make that as a signpost of any form of progress. We expect that if the president is sincere, he knows that Nigerians have given him a thumbs down in their performances of these ministers so far. Festus Keyamo has done fantastically well, whether you like it or not, because what government sometimes is all about is communication. Festus has been able to show to the world that he's active, he's working, he's desperate to see that some changes come come. And you can see with that, with all of the support it has given to Alain Oyema's airpiece, and much of the, activist mentality he brings into the airport services, willing to placing human concerns first before any other thing, safety as well. So Festus has done well. But apart from some of these names I mentioned, and again, you can't also take it away from the Foreign Affairs Minister. Beyond being very cerebral, he has not disappointed in the line of very excellent foreign affairs ministers we've had so far. So these persons will continue to give some measure of hope. But when you look at Wale Edu, which is very Wale Edu and Dele Alake with their very ambitious plans, you wonder, even though it will create some topsy-turvydom to not subject Wale Edu to too much scrutiny, but if Dele Alake appears to be very much needed continuously, because he has been quite very loud about plans. He's been quite hopeful and very, I wouldn't use the word noisy, but such a person is required, because when you see him making statements like the value of solid minerals worth 750 billion naira, and that he's going to transform the economy, I know he should, first of all, he has done very well with the progress he's made with lithium, because it's the next big thing, but with some apologies to Ben Bruce. Ben Bruce had earlier seen and said, look, the next line, I mean, when he sponsored a bill for electric vehicles, where we would have maximized lithium development, but it was laughed to scorn at the night assembly that was presided over by Ikokwu. But I'm happy that Dele Alake is very, very forthright, and in the way he has decided to put reform first. He has not boasted of doing so much, but at least he has set out on the path of creating a very solid foundation for the solid minerals ministry. Apart from that, these are the major signposts. The rest of their performances have been actually abysmal, shameful, and we must congratulate Nigerians for being quite patient and resilient under the suffering and pains during this last 1 year of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Ikokwu, do you want to stay on the track of assessing the ministers, or do you want to take the bigger picture in terms of this government? Every now and again we've heard inherited a bankrupt economy, really. Would it be fair to in 1 year say, look, we can definitively say that these are the results we should be getting based on the policies that have been put in place so far? I'd like you to address some of the policies. It looks like it's tough now, like they say, no gain without pain. Do you share that idea, or do you think by now we really should be seeing results of some of the government's policies?
Yes, we definitely have a very difficult circumstances in the country today, and yes, anybody can give excuse, but when a government comes into power, you shouldn't be giving excuses. You should hit the ground running. The president and his team say they are doing all what they can do. They are doing their best, but it looks like their best is not enough yet. 1 year is a short time. However, within 1 year, you want to see some movement. You want to see an impression. You want to get an impression that they're going somewhere and that they know where they are going.
What kind of movement? In terms of what exactly?
So look at
policy or what?
Of course, look at the economy, for instance. Look at the inflation rate. The general inflation is still very high, over 30%, and then food inflation is still very high, over 40%, and it doesn't look like this is going down. Insecurity, yes, there have been some gains here and there, but there's a lot of insecurity, especially in the states where we produce food, and so you want that to go away completely, because that impacts food, which is a bigger problem for people. How much you spend on food monthly is a big issue for many Nigerians. So we're not going to be talking about the cost of fuel. That is done. There's still fuel subsidy, but the cost of fuel is still high and it's still rising. So these are some of the things basic needs that impact people every day is what one wants to see. And I want to go back to what Suleiman said concerning other presidents in other countries that are much older and they are still presidents. Yeah. But that's not the point. In many countries around the world, those countries you have mentioned, the system runs effectively and efficiently. So the president doesn't have to carry much of the burden. In Nigeria, it's a totally different ballgame.
It doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like the same in the United States. So we see what that is doing to President Biden. I think I'm afraid this has to be another conversation.
Absolutely.
But I like to say it's good to see you on News 9, Dr. Constance, and I do hope that you can come again anytime soon. Frank has been a constant. Frank, thank you as always for your time.